Boston, Massachusetts, January 16, 1950. Midnight. The Brink's building on Prince Street stood silent against the winter sky, its granite walls absorbing the city's chill. Inside, the air carried the faint scent of gun oil and stale coffee, residuals from the armed guards pacing like clockwork. 11 tons of steel guarded the vault door. 3 layers of locks. Motion-triggered alarms wired directly to police headquarters. To the public, Brink's wasn't just a security company. It was the fortress of post-war America. Its armored trucks carried payroll for factories, cash for department stores, even the weekly take from Fenway Park. The slogan on its trucks, "We move money, not mountains," was a quiet boast. Nothing gets through us. But beneath the surface, the fortress had a rhythm. Guard rotations at 2 a.m., coffee breaks at 3:30. The night watchman's habit of propping open the service door with a brick during his cigarette break. 11 men had studied this rhythm for months from a diner across the street, nursing endless cups of coffee. Bobby McGinnis, the crew's safecracker, had memorized the guard's footsteps. The click-clack of O'Reilly's left boot, a loose heel, the shuffle of Henderson's arthritis. He noted how the night watchman, Pete Riley, always left his post at 1:47 a.m. sharp to call his wife. McGinnis carried a small notebook filled with sketches of the vault's layout, his belief unwavering. Every lock had a key, even if it was a man's routine. The Brink's mystique was no accident. Founded in 1889, it had survived 2 world wars and the Great Depression by being ruthlessly predictable. Its Boston headquarters, a converted 19th-century bank, was a temple of procedure. Cash arrived in canvas sacks stamped with client names. Sears, Roebuck and Company, Filling's Basement, Boston Transit Authority. At 6 p.m., the vault door sealed with a thunk that echoed through the building. By 7 o'clock, only 3 guards remained, 2 patrolling, 1 at the front desk. The system was flawless because it was boring. And boredom breeds complacency. Just 3 years earlier, in 1947, 2 amateurs had tried to crack Brink's. Armed with crowbars and desperation, they'd pried at a basement window near the loading dock. But the window was wired. Sirens wailed within seconds. The thieves fled, leaving behind a dropped wallet and a half-eaten sandwich. The Boston Globe headline read, "Fools versus Fort Knox." The lesson? Brink's wasn't just secure, it was predictable. And predictability, the 11 men realized, was the real vulnerability. Their planning began in the summer of 1949. Tony Pino, the crew's leader, gathered them in his East Boston apartment, a cramped space smelling of fish and damp wool. On the table lay blueprints stolen from a city engineer. Pino traced the building's layout with a calloused finger. The front door was suicide, the guards too alert. The back alley camera above the service door made that route impossible. But a narrow maintenance corridor behind the vault, the blind spot, offered a path. They would enter through a manhole in the alley, crawl through freezing pipes, and emerge inside the building unseen. McGinnis focused on the vault. He studied Brink's annual reports, noting they used Yale double-lock mechanisms. The night watchman, Riley, always wrote the combination on a scrap of paper taped inside his locker. McGinnis carried this knowledge like a secret mantra. Every lock had a key, and sometimes the key was a man's habit. The crew drilled relentlessly. In a rented warehouse, they built a plywood replica of the vault corridor. They practiced crawling in total darkness, counting steps, 37 from manhole to furnace room. They timed Riley's cigarette break, exactly 13 minutes. They rehearsed subduing guards with silent precision, using wax bullets to avoid injury. Tony Pino emphasized discipline above all. They would take only what fit in 6 duffel bags, no more. Greed would slow them down. Speed was their ally. On January 16th, the night before the heist, they gathered one last time. Snow fell softly on East Boston. In Pino's apartment, the air hung thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Each man checked his role. The manhole key, the wax bullets, the duffel bags lined with burlap to muffle jingling coins. McGinnis held up a small vial of baby powder. It was a detail born of obsession, proof they'd thought of everything. At 11:30 p.m., they moved. 6 men in dark wool coats melted into the snow-dusted alley behind Brink's. The manhole cover, oiled days earlier, lifted silently. One by one, they descended into the freezing darkness, 30 feet down, through narrow pipes caked with decades of grime. Water seeped into their boots. Rats skittered past their legs. They crawled on elbows and knees, duffel bags strapped to their backs, counting steps by touch. 1, 2, 17. The passage reeked of sewage and mildew. One wrong turn, and they'd be trapped in a labyrinth of brick and mortar. At 1:42 a.m., they reached the furnace room. McGinnis tested the door. It was unlocked, just as Riley left it. Through a crack, they watched Riley light his cigarette, step outside, and vanish into the alley. 1:47 a.m. exactly on schedule. Pino gave the signal. They flooded into the corridor, moving like shadows. The first guard at the front desk never saw the approach. The second guard, rounding the corner near the vault, heard only a faint sound before being subdued. The third guard, in the vault room, turned just as Pino's presence became undeniable. Inside, stacks of cash glowed under the dim work lights. Payroll sacks spilled $5 and $20 bills like confetti. McGinnis worked the combination lock with gloved hands, Riley's scribbled code flawless. The vault door opened with a sigh. They filled the duffel bags with surgical precision. $1.2 million in cash, $1.5 million in checks and bonds. No panique. No mistakes. In 18 minutes, it was done. They retreated through the passage, leaving no trace but a single footprint in the baby powder. Their own, from the exit. By 2:15 a.m., they were gone. The snow erased their tracks. Back in the warehouse, they counted the haul by lantern light. Pino allowed himself a rare smile, holding up a $100 bill. The untouchable Brinks had been breached. But as dawn broke over Boston, no one noticed the wallet left behind in the furnace room. A rookie's mistake. A wallet with a driver's license inside. The name Joseph Specs Shea. The clock had already begun ticking. Tony Pino wasn't born to lead heists. He was a quiet man who fixed washing machines for a living. A trade that taught him patience, precision, and how things really worked. His crew reflected that ethos. No hot-headed thugs, no trigger-happy amateurs. Just 11 men whose skills fit together like gears in a watch. Bobby McGinnis, the safecracker with a photographic memory for combinations. Frankie Costa, the getaway driver who could navigate Boston's snow-choked streets blindfolded. Specs Shea, the lookout whose sharp eyes missed nothing, except, tragically, his own wallet. Pino recruited them over months, testing loyalty like a scientist testing compounds. He'd approach a man in a bar. "I need someone who can hold his tongue for 6 months. No questions." If the man asked what for, he was out. If he said done, Pino bought him a drink. Trust wasn't earned through oaths. It was earned through silence. They met in basements and backrooms, never the same place twice. No names, just nicknames. The Professor, for McGinnis. The Wheelman, Costa. The Ghost, Shea. When Pino revealed the target, Brinks, no one flinched. "Impossible jobs pay the best," he said. "And we're not here to try. We're here to succeed." The crew's strength was its diversity. Some were ex-cons like McGinnis, who'd learned safecracking in Sing Sing. Others were respectable men. A postal worker, a union electrician, even a part-time church organist. Pino knew cops would never suspect the organist of crawling through sewers. "The world sees what it expects," he'd say. "So we give it what it expects." The organist played Christmas carols at midnight mass while casing Brinks. The postal worker delivered letters to the building daily, memorizing guard shifts. Their normalcy was their camouflage, but cohesion required ironclad rules. "Trust no one outside the circle," Pino drilled into them. "No boasting. No drunken confessions. Not even to wives." When Frankie Costa's wife asked why he bought new tires, he lied, "Road trip with the boys." When Specs Shea's girlfriend noticed his sudden cash, he said, "Found a wallet." The penalty for breaking silence? Immediate expulsion. and Pino made it clear he'd handle anyone who threatened the mission. The crew understood. In this circle, loyalty was life. Betrayal was death. Training was relentless. They practiced vault drills in abandoned factories, timing each movement to the second. McGinnis taught them to pick locks blindfolded. Costa ran escape routes through Boston's North End, timing traffic lights and alley turns. They rehearsed the takedown of guards until it was muscle memory. Chokeholds without sound, pistol shots with wax bullets that left no bruise. Real bullets mean real trouble, Pino warned. We're not here to hurt anyone, just to walk away clean. Yet the greatest test was greed. When Frankie Costa suggested taking all the cash in the vault, "It's right there," Pino shut him down. "We take 6 bags, not 7, not 5, 6. More is arrogance. Less is fear." He'd seen heists fail because thieves got greedy. In 1948, a crew in Philly emptied a bank vault but got caught lugging out 20 heavy sacks. "Speed beats weight," Pino said. "Always." To prove it, he made them practice dragging duffel bags filled with sand-up icy slopes. If a bag handle broke, they started over. Discipline wasn't optional. It was the difference between freedom and a lifetime behind bars. By December 1949, they were ready. Pino gathered them for one final briefing in a fish-packing plant reeking of salt and decay. Snow tapped against the windows like a nervous heartbeat. "January 17th, he said, spreading a map of Brink's. "Riley's cigarette break at 1:47. We have 13 minutes. No more." He looked each man in the eye. "If you see a problem, fix it. Don't panic. Don't talk. Just fix it." Then came the vow. "We leave no trace. No fingerprints. No witnesses. And no loose ends." They placed hands over hearts. A silent oath. 11 men. One mission. One chance. On the night of January 16th, they moved with clockwork precision. In the snow-dusted alley, Costa idled the getaway truck, engine purring. Inside the manhole, the crew crawled through darkness, counting steps by touch. When they emerged in the furnace room, Specs Shea gave the all-clear signal. 3 slow blinks of his flashlight. The takedown was flawless. Guards subdued, vault cracked, cash secured. But as they retreated through the passage, Shea's gloved hand brushed against the furnace room wall. The wallet in his coat pocket slipped out, landing silently in the baby powder. No one noticed, not even Shea. Back at the warehouse, they counted the haul. $1.2 million in cash, mostly small bills. Pino grinned, dividing the take into 11 equal shares. "Cleaner than a whistle," he said. But as Shea lit a cigarette, his hand trembled. "I think I dropped something," he muttered. Pino's smile vanished. "What?" Shea paled. "My wallet." The room froze. 11 men stared at the floor, imagining that wallet lying in the snow-covered alley. "Impossible," Pino finally said. "The snow covered it." But deep down he knew, snow melts, and wallets talk. 1:47 a.m. The furnace room door creaked open just wide enough for Tony Pino's eye. Outside, the corridor lay empty. Pete Riley's cigarette break right on schedule. Snowflakes drifted through the alley doorway, catching the moonlight like shattered glass. Pino raised 3 fingers. "Go. Now." 11 shadows spilled into the hallway, moving in perfect sync. Bobby McGinnis led the vault team, his gloved hands already tracing the combination lock's dials. Frankie Costa and 2 others melted toward the front desk where the night guard dozed over a Boston Globe. Specs Shea pressed himself against the vault room's doorframe, flashlight ready. Stealth over strength. The mantra pulsed in their veins. Inside the vault room, Pete Riley hadn't just left the door ajar. He'd abandoned stacks of cash mid-count. Payroll sacks from Filleen's basement spilled $5 bills across the steel table. Gold certificates fanned out like playing cards. McGinnis didn't hesitate. He spun the Yale lock's outer dial right to 28, then the inner left to 17. The mechanism clicked open with a sigh. Every lock has a key. The vault yawned open, revealing mountains of cash. Crisp $20s bundled in rubber bands, $100 bills stacked like bricks, even silver certificates stamped U.S. Treasury. The air smelled of ink, paper, and cold metal. They worked like surgeons. Costa's team approached the front desk guard with practiced precision. No sudden movements, no noise. The guard never lifted his head from the newspaper. 2 patrolling guards were met in the corridor, their routines exploited down to the second. One rounded the corner near the vault just as McGinnis's team emerged. A gloved hand clamped over his mouth, a nudge toward the wall, and he stood frozen, eyes wide. The second guard, farther down the hall, heard only a faint thwip of wax bullets striking the wall beside him, a warning to stay still. Riley returned from his smoke break to find Pino's presence blocking the vault room. The night watchman's breath hitched, but Pino's steady gaze silenced any protest. The crew moved with mechanical efficiency. Duffel bags lined with burlap hit the steel floor with soft thuds. McGinnis measured each load, $150,000 per bag, mostly small bills to avoid suspicion later. A payroll sack for Sears Roebuck? Left untouched. Bearer bonds? Stuffed into bag 3. Speed beats weight. Always. Frankie Costa monitored the clock, tapping his wrist twice to signal 5 minutes left. Specs Shea swept the corridor, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. All clear. The furnace room's baby powder glowed faintly under his light, undisturbed except for their own footprints. No traces. But the vault held ghosts. In the corner, a forgotten Christmas bonus sack spilled holiday cash. $50 bills stamped Merry Christmas from Fillings. Riley had set it aside for morning distribution. McGinnis hesitated. Taking it would breach Pino's rule. Only what fits in 6 bags. Yet the crew's discipline held. The sack stayed. Greed had no place here. At 1:58 a.m., Costa gave the signal. Time to leave. The crew retreated through the passage, duffel bags slung over shoulders. Shea lingered to sprinkle more baby powder over their tracks. A final safeguard. In the manhole, water seeped through gloves as they climbed the rusted rungs. Outside, snow blanketed the alley, erasing tire tracks from Costa's idling truck. By 2:15 a.m., they were gone. Back at the warehouse, lantern light revealed the haul. $1.2 million in cash, $1.5 million in checks and bonds. Pino counted each share with surgical care. $120, $500 per man. No arguments. No second guesses. The crew smoked in silence, the weight of success settling over them like the warehouse's damp chill. Specs Shea lit a cigarette, his hands steady now. Perfect. But Shea's calm cracked at 3 a.m. A flicker in his eyes, a tremor in his voice as he muttered to McGinnis. I think I dropped something. McGinnis froze. What? Shea paled. My wallet. The room turned ice cold. 11 men replayed the heist in their minds. The furnace room's baby powder, the retreat through the passage. Had they missed a trace? Pino's voice cut through the panic. The snow covered it. It's gone. But Shea knew better. Snow melts, and wallets talk. January 18, 1950. 2 days after the heist, the crew gathered in Tony Pino's apartment. The air smelled of fish stew and damp wool, but tension hung thicker than the steam from the stove. Pino spread the cash on the table, 11 equal stacks, each wrapped in brown paper. No changes, he said. We agreed. $120,500 each. No more, no less. But Frankie Costa's eyes lingered on the bearer bonds stacked in the corner. $500,000 in untraceable paper. Those bonds could double our take, he muttered. Pino's glare silenced him. We stick to the plan. Bonds draw heat. The crew's unity frayed like old rope. Specs Shea stopped sleeping, jumping at car engines outside. Bobby McGinnis spent hours shredding his notebook pages, fearing fingerprints. Even the respectable members slipped. The postal worker bought a new Cadillac. The church organist donated $10,000 to his parish. Money talks, but it also whispers secrets. By January 25th, Shea's paranoia became action. He confronted Pino in a North End bar, voice low but urgent. We need to move the bonds. Now. Pino refused. The plan was clean. Don't fix what isn't broken. Shea stormed out, muttering about leaving loose ends. The first crack came on February 3rd. A Brink's investigator traced the baby powder found in the furnace room to a local hardware store. The clerk remembered a man in a wool coat buying a vial the week of the heist. Had a nervous twitch, like he needed a smoke. Shay's habit. By February 10th, FBI agents were knocking on doors in East Boston. Shay vanished, leaving his girlfriend a note. "Gone to clear my head." His absence screamed guilt. Pino called an emergency meeting in a fish-packing plant. Snow tapped against the windows like a nervous heartbeat. "Shay's missing," Pino said. "If he talks, we're done." McGinnis argued for damage control. "Find him. Quietly." Costa disagreed. "Let him burn. Better one than all of us." For the first time, the crew split, half loyal to Pino's code, half eyeing Shay as a liability. That night, Shay resurfaced at a diner, pale and shaking. He'd spent 48 hours in a motel watching the street. "They're coming," he told McGinnis. "I saw a Fed outside my building." February 14th. Shay didn't show for the crew's check-in. By noon, Pino knew Shay had been picked up. At 3 p.m., the Boston Globe headline blared, "Brink's robbery suspect in custody." Inside the warehouse where they'd counted the haul, Pino burned Shay's share of the cash. "He broke the circle," he said, watching the flames. "Now we run." But the damage was done. Shay's wallet, found in the furnace room, had already given the FBI names, faces, and addresses. The crew's perfect crime had a single flaw: human nature. February 15th, 1950. FBI agent John Connolly stood in the Brink's furnace room, snow melting off his coat. In his gloved hand, a leather wallet recovered from the baby powder. Inside, a driver's license photo of Joseph Specs. Shay stared back, his nervous eyes frozen in 1948. Connolly smiled. "Every lock has a key." The wallet was the thread that would unravel the entire scheme. Forensics confirmed it. Shay's fingerprints on the furnace room door. His name in Brink's visitor logs from delivering mail in December. Even his Cadillac's tire treads matched tracks in the alley snow. By February 20th, Shay sat in an interrogation room, his alibi crumbling. "I was home that night," he insisted. Connolly slid a photo across the table. Shay's wallet, open to the license, lying in baby powder. "Explain this." Shay's hands trembled. I must have dropped it earlier." The FBI moved fast. On February 25th, they raided Shay's apartment, seizing a duffel bag hidden under floorboards. $120, $500 in Brink's cash. Inside the bag, a note in Pino's handwriting. "Trust no one outside the circle." The crew's mantra had become their epitaph. By March 1st, warrants were issued for Pino, McGinnis, and Costa. The FBI's strategy was simple: find the weak link, let it snap. Shay cracked first. On March 5th, he confessed to everything: the manhole entry, Riley's cigarette break, the 6 duffel bags. In exchange, he got immunity. "Tony Pino ran it," Shay told agents. McGinnis cracked the vault. Costa drove the truck. He even drew maps of the escape route. The FBI listened, taking notes. The smallest mistake can unravel the biggest plan. Shay's wallet wasn't just evidence, it was a confession. By April, the net tightened. McGinnis was caught trying to sell bearer bonds in New York. Costa's Cadillac was spotted near a Brink's branch in Providence. Pino fled to Canada but returned when his daughter fell ill. On May 10th, he surrendered at the border, hands raised. "I'm done running," he said. The crew's silence had lasted 112 days. At trial, Shay testified against them all. Pino stared at the floor as Shay described the furnace room, the baby powder, the 6 bags. "We thought we were ghosts," Shay said. "Turns out we were just men." The judge sentenced Pino to 15 years, McGinnis to 12, Costa to 10. Shay walked free. Years later, Pino would tell a reporter, "We planned every detail, every lock, every guard, every snowflake. But we forgot the one thing you can't control: a man's fear." The wallet left behind wasn't a mistake. It was a mirror, and in its reflection, the crew saw themselves. Not masterminds, but mortals. February 1950. The FBI's Boston field office hummed with a new rhythm. Agent John Connolly's desk overflowed with evidence. Shay's wallet, tire tread photos, baby powder samples. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A Brink's payroll clerk named Martha Evans. On January 18th, she'd noticed something odd while reconciling Filene's basement accounts. $50,000 in $5 bills stamped Merry Christmas had vanished from the vault. Those were set aside for bonuses, she told agents. Riley would never move them. Connolly's pulse quickened. This wasn't just a cash grab, it was surgical precision. The manhunt began with cold discipline. Connolly's team staked out East Boston tenements, tracking the crew's routines like hunters. They noted Frankie Costa's daily ritual. 7 a.m. at Santarpio's Pizza for espresso, always sitting by the window. On March 2nd, they followed him to a garage in Charlestown where he serviced his Cadillac. Hidden cameras captured him lifting the trunk, revealing a duffel bag identical to those used in the heist. When Costa left for coffee, agents pried the trunk open. Inside, $87,000 in Brink's cash, still bundled with Filene's rubber bands. No secret stays buried forever. Bobby McGinnis proved harder to corner. He'd vanished after Shay's arrest, leaving only whispers in Sing Sing's old inmate network. Then, on March 12th, a New York pawnshop owner called the FBI. A man matching McGinnis' description had tried to sell bearer bonds stamped Brink's security. Surveillance footage showed him in a wool cap, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Agents swarmed the Bowery flophouse where he'd registered under a fake name. They found him mid-repack. $200,000 in bonds spilling from a suitcase, wax bullets scattered across the bed. McGinnis didn't resist. "Took you long enough," he muttered, staring at the evidence. Tony Pino became a ghost. He fled to Montreal, living under the alias Thomas Riley, in a boarding house near Notre Dame Basilica. For 47 days, he avoided newspapers, burned his coat, and grew a beard. But on May 10th, his daughter's appendicitis forced his hand. Rushing her to Hospital Saint-Enfant Jesus, he used his real name at the front desk. Canadian police alerted the FBI. When Pino emerged from the hospital, 2 agents blocked his path. He raised his hands without a word, snow melting on his shoulders. "I'm done running," he said. The crew's silence had lasted 112 days. The arrests triggered a domino effect. Costa's wife, questioned at her kitchen table, broke first. She handed over a ledger hidden in her sewing kit, Pino's meticulous records of the crew's shares. "Tony said it was insurance," she whispered, tears smudging the ink. McGinnis' landlady revealed he'd paid 3 months' rent in cash the week after the heist. Even the church organist folded under pressure, surrendering $50,000 sewn into his choir robe lining. By June, all 11 men faced federal charges. The courtroom became a theater of betrayal. Prosecutors played wiretaps of Costa begging Pino, "Tell them I drove the truck but didn't enter the building." McGinnis' lawyer tried to discredit Shay's testimony. "My client was framed by a man who dropped his wallet like a rookie." But Shay's evidence was irrefutable. Photos of the furnace room's baby powder footprints matched McGinnis' work boots. When Pino took the stand, he stared straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge Shay. "I don't know that man," he said, though they'd shared coffee for years. The judge's gavel fell like a tombstone. Sentencing day, October 1950. The federal courthouse buzzed with onlookers. Families of Brink's employees packed the gallery. Guards who'd lost pensions, clerks who'd faced shame. Pino entered in a borrowed suit, his hands steady but eyes hollow. The judge, William T. McCarthy, adjusted his glasses and began, "Tony Pino, you orchestrated the most brazen theft in American history." Pino's jaw tightened as McCarthy detailed the crew's planning. The manhole entry, Riley's cigarette break, the 6 duffel bags. "You treated human trust as a commodity," the judge said. "Now you'll learn its value." Pino received 15 years. McGinnis, 12.
Costa, 10.
The organist got 5 for minimal involvement. Shay walked free, flanked by FBI agents as he exited. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Shay avoided cameras, but his hands trembled as he lit a cigarette. "I did what I had to," he mumbled. That night, he moved to Florida under a new name. The crew's perfect crime had ended not with a bang, but with the scrape of prison gates. Inmates at Alcatraz nicknamed Pino the Professor. His cell held only 3 items: a Bible, a chessboard, and a photo of his daughter. Guards noted his quiet dignity. He taught illiterate prisoners to read, never complained about meals. But in 1953, a fight in the yard changed everything. A convict from the Philly crew, the ones who'd failed at Brink's in 1947, recognized Pino. "You're the guy who pulled it off," he sneered. When Pino ignored him, the man smashed a tray over his head. Pino didn't fight back. "I paid my debt," he told the warden later. "This is extra." McGinnis found purpose in the prison library. He studied law books, drafting appeals that went nowhere. His only rebellion came in 1955, when he refused to work the laundry detail. "I cracked vaults," he told guards. "Not sheets." He spent 30 days in solitary, a concrete box with a slit for food. There, he sketched Brink's blueprints on toilet paper, reliving every step. "We were ghosts," he wrote in a smuggled letter. "Then we became men." Costa's downfall was swift. In 1951, guards found him with a homemade still in his cell. Alcoholism, they noted in his file. By 1954, he'd lost 2 fingers in a factory accident. "Speed beats weight," he joked bitterly to Pino during yard walks. "But time beats us all." When parole came in 1960, he returned to Boston a broken man, driving cabs while his Cadillac sat rusting in a junkyard. The crew's families bore silent scars. Pino's daughter, now 16, visited him monthly but never spoke of her mother's suicide in 1952. McGinnis' wife divorced him, taking their savings to open a laundromat. "Ironic, isn't it?" she told reporters. Costa's son dropped out of high school to support his mother, working nights at a fish packing plant. Freedom isn't free. The price echoed in empty chairs at dinner tables, in pawned wedding rings, in the way neighbors crossed the street to avoid the robber's kin. By 1956, the Brink's building stood empty, a hollow shell on Prince Street. Vandals broke its windows. Teenagers daubed "Ghosts Live Here" on its walls. The city auctioned it off for $75,000, a fraction of its worth. The new owner converted it into a parking lot, where cars now erased the ghosts of that January night. Only the furnace room remained untouched, its baby powder long gone, but its story etched in the bricks. The silence began the moment Shay walked free. In Alcatraz's exercise yard, Pino spotted McGinnis staring at him from across the chain-link fence. McGinnis' lips moved. "You knew." But the wind swallowed the words. Pino turned away. That night, a note appeared in his cell. "Traitor's blood pays debts," scrawled in shaky handwriting, and signed. The prison warden dismissed it as inmate drama. "Fear makes monsters of men," Pino told his lawyer the next day. Paranoia spread like mold. McGinnis stopped eating meals with Pino, claiming stomach issues. Costa started carrying a shiv fashioned from a toothbrush. In the prison library, McGinnis found a book on poisons left open to arsenic. He reported it, but guards shrugged. "Everyone's got enemies here." The truth was darker. Shay's immunity deal included weekly updates on the crew's morale. FBI agents fed him snippets. Pino's asking about parole. Costa's drinking battery acid. Shay used the intel to demand more protection, painting his former brothers as threats. The breaking point came in 1951. A guard discovered Costa and McGinnis in the laundry room, locked in a silent struggle. Costa had McGinnis pinned against dryers, hands around his throat. "You told Shay about the bonds."
Costa Heist.
McGinnis gasped. "Never." They were separated, but the damage was done. That evening, Pino found McGinnis in the infirmary, neck bruised, eyes bloodshot. "Costa believes Shay's lies," McGinnis whispered. "He thinks I cut a deal." Pino said nothing. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be glued back together. Outside prison walls, the betrayal deepened. Shay's Florida life unraveled. His new wife discovered his past when a Miami Herald reporter knocked on their door. She left him with their infant son, taking only a suitcase. Alone in a motel room, Shay called the FBI. "I want to talk again." Agents arrived to find him shredding Pino's old maps. "They'll kill me," he confessed. "I hear footsteps outside my door at night." The FBI moved him to a safe house, but Shay's paranoia was contagious. He accused his handler of leaking his location, then barricaded himself in a bathroom, screaming about ghosts in the walls. In 1953, Shay vanished. For 3 weeks, the FBI searched Miami's canals and swamps. Then, a fisherman found Shay's wallet floating near Government Cut. Inside, a note: "They found me." The case went cold, but prison rumors flew. Costa claimed Shay was sleeping with the Barracudas. McGinnis insisted he'd fled to Cuba. Pino just shook his head. Men don't vanish. They become ghosts. Years later, a Miami bartender admitted Shay had worked there under a fake name until 1957, when a bar fight left him with a head wound. He disappeared again, leaving only a bloodstain on the floor. The crew's families felt the fallout. Pino's daughter stopped visiting after a reporter ambushed her at school. "Does your dad feel guilty?" She changed her name and moved to Oregon. McGinnis' ex-wife received threatening letters. "Your husband talks in his sleep." Costa's son found his locker stuffed with Brink's newspaper clippings and a single wax bullet. The crew's crime had become a contagion, spreading through generations like a curse. By 1955, the fractures were irreparable. Pino refused to speak to McGinnis after guards intercepted a letter where McGinnis suggested Shay's disappearance was long overdue. Costa started fights with anyone from Boston, shouting, "You know what they did?" during yard walks. The warden transferred them to separate blocks, but the damage was done. In solitary confinement, McGinnis carved a single word into his cell wall: trust. It became his epitaph. The FBI watched it all. Connolly's team filed reports on the crew's disintegration. Subject Pino exhibits emotional detachment. Subject Costa displays violent tendencies. Subject McGinnis shows signs of psychosis. They'd weaponized the crew's greatest strength, loyalty, turning it into a slow poison. Shay's immunity wasn't just a deal, it was a detonator. And the crew had lit the fuse themselves the moment Shay's wallet hit the baby powder. In 1958, McGinnis tried to hang himself with his bedsheets. Guards cut him down, but the attempt left him with a permanent tremor in his hands. During recovery, he received a package: Shay's old wallet, empty except for a photo of the crew taken before the heist. On the back, a message in unfamiliar handwriting: "Ghosts don't forgive." McGinnis burned it in the infirmary trash can, the flames reflecting in his hollow eyes. Pino's release day, 1965. Alcatraz had closed months earlier, but he served his full sentence at Leavenworth. Stepping through the prison gates, he carried only a paper bag with his belongings. No family waited. His daughter had married and moved west. His wife's grave sat in Calvary Cemetery. He took a bus to East Boston, where his old apartment building now housed Vietnamese refugees. The landlord, recognizing him, offered a room for $40 a week. Cash only, no questions. Pino nodded. No questions. His first act was mundane: buying a newspaper at Santarpio's Pizza. The headline read, "Brink's robbery mastermind walks free." Patrons fell silent as he sat at the counter. The espresso tasted bitter like regret. He left a $5 tip, the smallest bill he owned, and walked out. That night, he scrubbed floors at a fish packing plant for $1.25 an hour. Freedom isn't free. The phrase haunted him as he counted his earnings. $37.50 for a week's work. Less than 1% of his share from the heist. McGinnis didn't last a year outside. Paroled in 1962, he moved into a flophouse near South Station. His hands still shook from the suicide attempt, making safecracking impossible. He took odd jobs, delivering groceries, cleaning offices, but employers fired him when they Googled his name. "You're a risk," one told him, sliding a Brink's newspaper clipping across the desk. By 1964, He was living in a cardboard box under the Charlestown Bridge, surviving on soup kitchen meals. One freezing January night, a patrolman found him unconscious in the snow. He died in Massachusetts General Hospital with $2.37 in his pocket and no identification. The morgue tagged him as John Doe number 47. Only when a nurse recognized his prison tattoo did they connect him to the Brink's crew. Costa fared slightly better. Paroled in 1960, he drove a cab for 10 years, avoiding downtown Boston where Brink's trucks still rolled. But in 1970, a passenger recognized him from a True Detective magazine feature. "Aren't you the guy who robbed Brink's?" Costa slammed on the brakes, fled into an alley, and didn't stop running until he reached Maine. He worked at a lobster cannery under the name Frank Smith, mending nets with his two-fingered hands. His daughter tracked him down in 1975, but he refused to see her. "Tell her I died in prison," he told the social worker. She left a photo of her children on his doorstep. He burned it in his wood stove. The crew's families carried invisible wounds. Pino's granddaughter, born after his release, learned about the heist from a schoolmate. "Your grandpa stole Christmas money." She avoided family reunions, ashamed of the whispers. McGinnis' niece inherited his chessboard from the prison library. When she asked her mother about him, she was told, "He chose money over family." Costa's grandson, a Boston police officer, requested reassignment after arresting a suspect who sneered, "Your grandpa was a thief too." Even Brink's employees suffered long shadows. Pete Riley, the night watchman, lost his job and couldn't find new work. He sold newspapers on a street corner until arthritis crippled his hands. In 1968, he died penniless in a VA hospital, clutching a Boston Globe clipping about Pino's release. The guard subdued by Costa's team became an alcoholic, his widow told investigators. He kept reliving that night in his sleep. By 1970, the crew's legacy was dust. The Brink's building became a parking lot where teenagers smoked pot and traded rumors. "They say ghosts count money there at midnight," one told a reporter. The FBI closed its case file, stamping it resolved. But in East Boston tenements, mothers still warn children, "Don't be like the Brink's men. Greed steals more than money." The lesson wasn't taught. It was felt in empty apartments and unvisited graves. Pino lived to 82, dying quietly in his East Boston room. His obituary in the Boston Herald mentioned only his washing machine repair business. But on his deathbed, he whispered to a hospice nurse, "Tell them." The furnace room was cold. She didn't understand. Neither did the priest who closed his eyes. Only the wind through Prince Street's parking lot seemed to know what he meant. The weight of baby powder on a forgotten wallet. The echo of 11 footsteps fading into snow. Chicago. A crew of 5 men crouched in an alley behind the First National Bank, replicating Pino's blueprint. They'd studied Brink's blueprints stolen from a museum archive, timed guard rotations with stopwatches, even used baby powder to check for footprints. At 2:17 a.m., they pried open a manhole cover, just like Pino's crew. But Chicago's sewers were narrower. One man got stuck halfway, screaming as icy water rose around him. His panic alerted a night watchman, who triggered alarms. The heist collapsed in 12 minutes, leaving behind a soggy copy of The Brink's Job, a true crime classic. The Brink's robbery became folklore. In 1961, MGM released The Brink's Job, starring Peter Falk as Pino. East Boston locals picketed screenings. They made heroes out of thieves, but teenagers smuggled into theaters, mesmerized by the heist's precision. One viewer, a 17-year-old from Queens, later robbed 12 banks using Pino's manhole tactic, earning the nickname The Ghost before his arrest. "I just wanted to be part of the legend," he told police. Urban legends bloomed like weeds. Tourists visited Prince Street's parking lot, claiming to hear cash registers at midnight. A psychic told the Boston Globe she'd contacted Shay's spirit. "He's trapped in the furnace room, counting baby powder." In 1983, a construction crew digging near Brink's found a rusted duffel bag, but it held only rat bones and melted snow. Yet the myth persisted. They buried the rest insisted a local historian on a TV documentary, pointing at sewer maps. The Cruz families lived in the shadow of infamy. Pino's granddaughter, now a librarian, discovered her elementary school file stamped Brink's relation, explaining why she'd been passed over for class president. McGinnis' niece found his prison chessboard at a flea market, bought it for $5, and kept it hidden in her attic. Costa's grandson, the police officer, resigned after his captain joked, "Don't let the Brink's genes kick in." In 1990, a woman named Lily Shea arrived at the Boston Public Library. She claimed to be Specs Shea's daughter, conceived before his disappearance. "He sent money until 1957, she said, showing faded Western Union receipts. Researchers found no record of her birth, but she carried Shea's driver's license photo, identical to the one in the furnace room wallet. She vanished after requesting Brink's case files, leaving only a note, "Some ghosts need peace." The heist reshaped crime itself. Bank vaults added seismic sensors to detect tunneling. Security firms trained guards to spot baby powder traces. Even the FBI's training manual included a section, "The Brink's Lesson, Trust the Routine." Not the routine's predictability, but copycats kept coming. In 2003, thieves dug a 300-foot tunnel into a Berlin bank vault, inspired by a Brink's documentary. When caught, they quoted Pino, "Speed beats weight." Yet the deepest echoes lived in silence. In a Scarsdale nursing home, Pete Riley's widow refused to speak of Brink's, clutching her husband's watch, the one he wore the night of the heist. In East Boston, a retired cop who'd guarded Brink's after the robbery still checked manhole covers on his nightly walks. And in Prince Street's parking lot, teenagers dared each other to spend midnight among the cars, listening for the thwip of wax bullets in the wind. 2023 Prince Street parking lot, Boston. Rain slicks the asphalt where Brink's once stood. A tour guide points at a faded plaque, site of 1950 Brink's robbery. Teenagers yawn, scrolling TikTok videos of the heist. 11 guys stole $1.2 million in 18 minutes. The guide drones. They got caught, 'cause one dropped his wallet. A girl snorts. So dumb. She doesn't know Shea's wallet sits in the FBI archives. Its leather cracked like old skin. Or that Pino's chessboard sold for $12,000 at auction to a crypto billionaire who called it the original hack. The Brink's robbery lives in DNA. Bank vaults now use biometric locks that change combinations hourly. Security cameras track footprints in real-time baby powder alternatives. Yet every year, new crews attempt variations. In 2019, thieves tunneled into a London bank vault using Pino's manhole tactic, caught only because they left a Starbucks cup with fingerprints. History rhymes, a security expert told The Guardian. But fools never learn the tune. Cultural echoes pulse through time. Martin Scorsese's The Departed features a Brink's heist homage. A Broadway musical, 11 Shadows, ran for 3 months in 2018. True crime podcasts dissect the crew's psychology. Pino's discipline was his downfall, argued one host. He planned for everything except human fear. But the most haunting tribute came in 2020, when a street artist painted 11 ghostly figures on Prince Street's parking garage wall, each holding a duffel bag, faces obscured by snow. Locals left coins at its base. For the ghosts who never got their cut. For the families, the legacy is a quiet scar. Pino's great-granddaughter, a Harvard law student, discovered his past during a background check for a clerkship. "I almost quit school," she told the Crimson. "How do you defend justice when your blood built a prison?" She kept the secret until writing her thesis, "The Brink's Robbery and the Myth of the Perfect Crime." McGinnis' niece donated his prison chessboard to a museum with a stipulation. Display it as a warning, not a trophy. The FBI still guards the ghosts. Shea's wallet remains in Evidence Locker 7B, its contents cataloged. Driver's license? For $1.27 in change. A photo of a woman who vanished from records. When a journalist requested it in 2015, the agent handling the file muttered, "Some cases never close." He slid the wallet across the table, its leather cold as the January night it was dropped. Inside, the photo's woman stared out, her name unknown, her story lost to the furnace room's shadows. On January 17, 2050, the 100th anniversary, a historian will stand where Brink's once stood. She'll recount how 11 men walked into a vault and walked out with a fortune, only to lose everything to a single wallet. Tourists will nod, snap selfies, and forget. But in East Boston apartments, descendants will pause, feeling the weight of choices made in snow-dusted alleys. They'll hear their grandfather's voices in the silence. Every lock has a key, and they'll wonder what keys they carry in their own pockets, waiting to be dropped. The Brink's robbery wasn't about money. It was about the moment trust curdles into betrayal. The instant a wallet slips from a coat, a snowflake melts, or a man realizes his perfect plan has a flaw only time can reveal. That flaw lives on in every vault, every security camera, every child warned not to trust the quiet man counting steps in the dark. The crew's real legacy isn't in ledgers or prison records. It's in the baby powder still sprinkled on floors worldwide. A silent prayer that no footprint will be left behind.